School, grades, all that stuff we do and the way we do it. Is it antiquated? On the other side. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the South Star Classroom. Class is officially in session, and our lecturer, our leader, our guy today with the hair is black as the evening night, Omar Yanar. You have it, brother. How are you?
Black is my heart, baby.
That's
good, man. And
all
speaking of black as my heart, man, like happy Halloween, everybody. It's Halloween today.
That's right.
You know? Whether you
I was really waiting
for
somebody to say, "Hey, I need the night off." Like, especially the people with kids, I definitely was like, "Y'all should probably be out right now." But hey, I'm mind my business.
Yo, man. I mean, I want to check in with everybody and see how everyone's doing, and also ask if y'all did anything for Halloween. Ladies first, Jubilee, man, how's it going down there?
It's going great. I'm tired, and I'm happy because it's still kind of warm. But we don't celebrate Halloween, even though my kids, beg, go trick or treat and blah, blah, blah. So one of my sons just asked me, I'm going to let him go like door to door in our building. I don't want him out in the streets. I just don't trust the people, and that's that. But other than it is on another note, it is my sister, one of my younger sister's birthday today. She was born on Halloween. So that's my holiday, her birthday. So she's 30.
There it is.
Yep.
Well, happy birthday to your sister. David, man, how you feeling?
I'm good. So yeah, it's still early out here at 3:00 on the West Coast.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But I'll be here at the house handing out candy to the neighborhood kids, and my son is going to be out with his friends. Mom's going to be supervising. They're going to some other area, but yeah, you got to, regardless, you got to be safe. It's not like it used to be, but I got stories for days about Halloween when I was a kid and the kinds of things that we used to do, but it was all just joking around, right?
Of course it was.
Was it?
Oh man,
it's always joking to the person who don't have to pay for the property damage.
So much of the therapy session right now, like
we did some stuff. And shout out to all the, I know schools are a little bit different. Some schools let kids dress up, some don't. My kid's school does, and so it was a kind of a kick this morning at drop off. Probably not a whole lot of learning going on today. Funny that we're going to be talking about the units, right? The credit system. So maybe check today's minutes off. But the kids are excited, and so that's cool. I like that. So shout out to all the teachers that had to put up with all that today. I left my kid with he's like, we're having a donut party in advisory. So he left with a dozen donuts, and I'm like, good luck.
But if every kid brought a donut, that's a ton of donuts, man. They like every kid having like 87.
Did you see David's laugh and grin? His grin, he had like a Cheshire cat grin just then.
I haven't gotten a call from school yet, and we're like 30 minutes out, so we're good.
From like the diabetes patrol and shit, be like, your kids having cardiac
nobody
arrest.
Cares.
122
the kids
wenchel
they're stroking out. It's fine. They're fine. Hey, Mr. Ankrum, how you doing? And then also, related to this time of the year, we have put together and are slowly organizing our Day of the Dead altar, which we generally celebrate as brown people, kind of pre-Halloween, and then through the last couple of days in the early days of November, when we set up ofrendas for those that have passed on to the next level when they come back to help guide their souls and reconnect with them, not through like sadness or sorrow, but through like celebration and music and storytelling. And so it's always a special time of the year. So we it's amazing. Every year you're like, okay, who do we have to add this year? And it's like every year more and more people are passing away. And so we got to do a little bit more work there. But yeah, that's about it. That's what's going on over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Doc, how you feeling?
Well, I planned on going to go hoop afterwards. I've been back in the gym, so back lifting and doing a bunch of stuff. But I get my cardio through playing basketball, and I tweaked everything. Last time I had it was my I think some of you know I had a really, really nasty knee injury a few years ago where I tore my ACL, MCL, and my meniscus, and so tweaked that a little bit and slightly may have pulled a hamstring, but it's fine. You just gotta stretch a little bit better, but it was feeling good. I was moving freely. And as soon as I wasn't overthinking about my knee and overcompensating, that's when it happened. It was a no contact play. It was just the way I jumped and landed, but I have to let some of this weight go. So been lifting, and that's doing good for the shape up, but the cardio gets my that'll get me, that'll get that weight back down so I can play the way I want to play. And
Speaking of weight, Doc, have you tried the advisory donut party?
I did not try the advisory donut party. I saw my partner in crime have a Cheshire grin across his face when they mentioned it. Are they Krispy Kreme donuts? Are they Krispy Kreme donuts?
No, they're better. They're from the local spot. They're good.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, they're good. There's good, but then there's like the red light, Krispy Kreme, which is crack. So but no, I'm good.
So good.
I am. It is snowing today, so it's the first snow. So
okay.
I don't think anything is
degrees in South Carolina. It's snowing as hell in Chicago.
I don't think that's any of the I don't think that's gonna stop any of the kids though, the neighborhood kids. And I think that they're gonna have a good time. It's not sticking yet, but it's just letting you know that Chicago is here and is woken up. And and I have a basketball court being delivered to my crib. I know it's about to be winter, but they couldn't deliver it through the summer because of my work schedule. So Friday they will be installing the court outside of my crib. So
excellent.
Baby. You got a basketball court, you got an advisory full of donuts, and you got a glass full of yak.
I'm going to Charles. When are we going to Charles's house? Can we do a field trip? I can get my.
We can do the winter. I have a full studio at my house, so you can absolutely
Chicago and shit in the
I'm
winter.
coming to Charles's house because this is like what?
Yeah, man, it's gonna be Charles and Elliot Ness hanging out in.
Listen,
the
man.
Listen.
I mean, we can go eat at one of Capone spots, man. All the restaurants are still there. I will say this, like, I have a full studio here, so we could absolutely do that. I just need to plan ahead to actually get a crew and do all that good stuff. But I would love for us to actually do a show with cameras in the situation. So
summertime in Chicago. Summertime in Chicago is the best, dude. You hang out in the
summertime in Chicago can be brutal too. But yes, it is very nice. It's very nice. But you got this. How are you doing, brother? You've been down a little bit the last few weeks or whatnot. Yep. So how you feeling, man? How what's new with you?
Oh, better, man. I was out of town for the last 2 weeks, checking in on a buddy of mine whose mom passed away in June, and we promised him that we were going to check in on him, man. My boy Sam Sanders from grad school. For all our listeners, man, if you don't know who Sam Sanders is, man, he's a famous podcaster. He was on the NPR Politics podcast, won an award for his NPR podcast called It's Been a Minute. And now he's on this really prominent podcast called Vibe Check. So you should check him out. We went in and just saw how he's doing. It was a welfare check, and we did all the things. Went to the Sequoia National Forest, is beautiful. Checked out the Joshua trees in Joshua Tree National Park, and that was after seeing U2 at the Sphere play songs from the Joshua Tree album.
The Sphere, man. The Sphere. Are y'all, David and Juke? Are y'all familiar with the Sphere?
Yep.
Are you familiar with the Jubilee? So the brother that owns the New York Knicks, he also owns a lot of shit. Actually, but the Sphere is this huge, gorgeous thing. Even on the outside, it'll turn to a basketball or not. Like it's
all LED lights. Jubilee on the outside, so the outside can be any shape or form in like a video format. So it's got like an eyeball going around or like a smiley face looking at the plane.
Well, do like basketball because they got the NBA and the partnership. Yeah.
Nice.
And then on the inside, it's the same thing. So it's all these, essentially, the entirety of the sphere is constructed by screens. And I was like, man, these screens are really high definition. What is this, 5K, 6K? And some guy's like, that's 18K, baby. I'm like, 18? Y'all like making shit up, like making up numbers? And they're like, it's that immersive shit, baby. And I was like, I don't even know you that well, mister. Who are you? Or just some dude talking to me. But like you're in this like sphere where the entirety of it is like, imagine an IMAX theater, except in a definition that is more vivid than real life, completely surrounding you, like a almost 360-degree theater perspective. So like there's U2 playing their songs and you're just enraptured like a caveman looking at these lights and looking at the art that they put on these screens, just kind of like drooling out.
I bet you half of the people there were definitely on acid or mushrooms.
Oh
definitely.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Absolutely.
1,000%, man. Without a doubt, it's Vegas. And I mean, like we caught some older folks, man, like some people in their 60s, like having trouble, like taking a seat correctly. I mean, they were stumbling around. Yeah. They were like slurring the words to the songs. I'm like, yo, fam, like, do you need like, why don't you sit out a couple of rounds? You know, this isn't even their best song. Sit down. Elevation's not that great of a song. So it was badass.
It is on mushrooms.
I mean, anything is on mushrooms, man.
It is on acid. On acid, it's incredible. Love to Bono. I'm not a U2 fan, but I respect them and I appreciate them. And I absolutely would have gone to the Sphere.
Yeah, it's incredible
to see that.
And I think Sam said it best. He's not like a huge U2 fan, but it's one of those bands that if you're, you know, over the age of 30, you know all the songs, even if you don't know that it's U2. Like, you know, some of the, like, dude, Where the Streets Have No Name and One and, you know, With or Without You, like, people know the lyrics to those songs.
Sunday, like, Bloody Sunday.
Sunday, Bloody Sunday, man. Incredible song about the IRA and the war in Ireland. So I was badass, dude. I'm back. I'm recovering, getting back to work. And we're here celebrating our return to South Star. And today is Halloween, ladies and gentlemen. And as a 7th grade teacher, I got to quickly just interject and say that I used to research the origins of these things really quickly. Halloween came from speaking of U2 and the Irish, a Celtic Gaelic holiday called Samhain. And this was their holiday that the Celtic people would celebrate for the harvest. And it wouldn't just be a celebration of the harvest. They believed that this day was the thinnest veil between the Day of the Dead and the Day of the Living, and thus would dress up in goats' heads. They would put on severed goats' heads and dance around a fire to ward off evil spirits. That's where we got dressing up from. And then ultimately, the Catholic and the Latin kind of congruency of Europe, like, that's a big word. Basically, like, if you were Catholic and shit, speaking about them Italians and Spanish and everything else, that's where Day of the Dead came from, to celebrate those that have passed. And then the Mexicans transcended that into Dia de los Muertos, where you have like a multi-day celebration where you do, as the Beard of Knowledge was talking about, these altars to commemorate those that passed. And then you're going to the actual grave sites and offering gifts to celebrate those who have passed on. And it's less gothy and, you know, dark and more vibrant and beautiful as a day to say, hey, if we're going to celebrate moms and we're going to celebrate dads, and even in Mexico, there's a day of celebration for the children. This is the day that we're celebrating our ancestors who came before us, who are no longer with us. So happy Dia de los Muertos, Samhain, Halloween to everybody.
That's what's up. Thank you.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, we gotta, you know, then we're gonna get nerdy as hell. We got a weird ass show, and I'm gonna break it down really simply, just getting us into this. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna talk about Carnegie credits. And everyone on the show is like, what the hell is that? So I'm going to give a definition, that I'm going to ask an existential question of everybody on the show, and particularly Toya. Yo, Mr. Ankrum, great to see you. I want you all to chime in the comments and shit. Quickly, Carnegie units. What the hell are these? Why should you even care about them? You should care about them because you know them all too well. These are the units that every single one of us use to graduate from high school. So you're like, oh, you mean them high school units? Yes, they're called Carnegie units. Where the hell did they come from? So back in 1906, Carnegie, as in, yes, like Dale Carnegie, right? Tycoon, Carnegie Mellon, Carnegie Foundation, all those names that you heard about. That institution back in 1906, I want you to think about that shit. 1906, that's 20 years after the Civil War. We have spent a longer time after the Persian War than this time from Civil War to Carnegie units, where they're like, yo, we don't know how to measure learning in high school. And particularly from a college perspective, how do we start standardizing the process of understanding how a kid, and, you know, at the time, I don't know, it's 1906, man. California was established as a state by this point, I hope. Learning in California was the same as Ohio, is the same as Kentucky, is the same as Connecticut, right? So what they basically said is, all right, we've established that you need 120 hours of this subject in order to be competent. So they basically established if you've gotten 120 hours, there are your credits. Today, you will know that it takes about 18 to 24 credits to graduate high school. And this was the system that the Carnegie Foundation set up.
18 to 24. 18 to
24 credits today. So depending on your state. So like some states will allow 18 credits to graduate from high school. Some states offer honors if you garner 24 credits for graduating high school. Some states are different. Like, is it different in Illinois? Is it different in California?
I mean, in California, it was like, yeah, I felt like it was, but I don't want to belabor the point. But yeah, but basically the standard way in which credits in high school play out is from Carnegie. Got it.
Correct. It's a collection of 7,200 minutes of instruction for about 24 weeks. This is how they established it. So what this became like, quote, as it said, the coin of the realm. Every state would use this credit system. Y'all used the credit system. Everyone here had credits graduating from high school and even college.
Mm-hmm.
So before we even break into, like, you know, the questions about the show, I got to ask the three of y'all and our listeners, I want to ask yourself an existential question, which is simple. What did you all actually learn from high school? What did you learn from high school? Can you remember? And I mean, don't be like, oh, I learned about Shakespeare and biology. I'm like, I don't remember biology. Like, hardly. Like, I can hardly remember what the hell was going on in biology. I could barely tell you what was going on in chemistry. So don't give me some of that shit.
Some of that. I would say I didn't go to the best high school, but I learned social skills. It's where it was more of a social experiment, I think, and just how kind of microcosm of society on a larger realm. I had a very, very smart science teacher, but he was a terrible science teacher. But the one thing I remember is the name of all my companies, the energy converters. I was so fascinated in learning about energy and that it couldn't be stopped, but it could be converted or transferred, and energy is everywhere. And I just thought that was just fascinating. And honestly, had he stayed in that bag and talked about everything else in that way, I probably would have been a scientist. That was just that has shaped how I think and look at things in my life. So, like, you know, so energy converters, like how I was born, lived in shelters, all that stuff, but that's energy. That energy isn't good or bad till I give it value and I use or repurpose that. And that's the reason we have these podcasts. That's the reason I have my companies. That's the reason that you know me as you know me, because I saw it as stored up energy that I needed to convert into something positive, or it was going to be negative for me. But I learned a lot about just social structures and herd mentality and like how people kind of click up and things like that. I think high school is a very interesting social experiment.
Well, I mean, but did you learn that from like the classroom, or did you just learn that from like fucking Lord of the Flies?
No, it was what you talking about both. I read Lord of the Flies in high school from this very cool white dude. And I remember him because he was like a biker and he could not, and he introduced us to Pink Floyd. Like, he was like,
you told us about this.
Yes, I talked about him. So but Lord of the Flies probably was one of those places where it got broken down with verbiage. I experienced it, but I think Lord of the Flies exemplified kind of what that parring looks like. And also Lord of the Flies is more of like what human nature is if humans are left to their own devices and how that works. And then he explained the symbolism, and I didn't get it at the time, but now I do. So
yeah, man. And we'll get back to that because I really want to hit the point of like experienced it. That's going to be relevant later on in the show.
Okay. Well, you got to give us more tools, brother. You got to ask us the question the right way so we can set you up.
I'm gonna give you all the man. No, this brother, man. This is a talk show, man. We talking here, shit. That's all part of the conversation.
I want to know what David learned. I want to know what the beard of wisdom, the beard of knowledge learned in high school. I'm very interested. I love his old stories about when he was in school. So, and you're muted.
You're unmuted, brother. You got to tell me about those locusts forever as well.
Yeah, no, we're not going to talk about that. I think it's interesting because I went on to study history and social science in college. But I didn't really, my big takeaways from like high school were not like literature or English or history related. They were mainly like math. I learned a lot of math. I definitely learned a lot of math in high school. And so
like learned it to where like you could use it today. Like you got that calculus going?
Yeah, I can calculus, still. I would need to like brush up on calculus, but I'm still pretty like fluent all the way up through like the second year of algebra.
Algebra 2.
Yep. But I took pre-calculus in high school. So I think definitely like there's a math component there. And then to be totally honest, in middle school, which back in the day we called junior high, I learned wood and I learned graphic design, right? We had like shop classes, right? Wasn't in high school. In high school, I couldn't take shop classes because I was doing sports. But in middle school and in junior high, I definitely learned, how to manipulate wood and like, cut wood and design things. And the same thing with, graphic design and photography. We had like technical classes where you like learn hard skills, but again, that was
I want to get back to that. So you got yourself some math, but what was it about those classes, like particularly like wood shop and photography, that made you learn it so well?
Because you got to practice it, you got to do it. Like I have a pendulum clock that my father just gave back to me that I made for him when I was in middle school, and he's like, "We don't need this anymore." They had it up. They just painted the house. They took it down. It's in my garage. It's a beautiful wooden pendulum, like grandfather clock, right? And everyone's like, "Where'd you get that?" I'm like, "I made it when I was 13 years old."
That's cool.
And other things like that. So it's like hands-on, right? You actually get to like use the tools.
Again, that's going to come in relevant later. Jubilee, what'd you learn in high school?
I learned that I sucked at math. Because I also had
many of us learned that too.
I had a few brilliant math teachers. They just were not great at teaching it.
Yeah.
So I like math was still kind of my jam in middle school and in the beginning of high school. But then by the time I got to like the second half of 10th grade, it's like, what are y'all talking about? And in terms of it being a social experience, like I cut like pretty much all of my classes from my sophomore year, like all of them. Like I would go to school, the security guard, like I was on the gospel choir. So like we had perks, unwritten, and we were down with the security guards. They would let us go to Burger King, come back in the building, so my entire
you didn't like me.
Burger King. Oh, word.
Oh, yes.
So you
learned like me.
Yes, 10th grade. Yeah, I was in the cafeteria playing Spades.
Can't believe it. I can't believe this.
I was making friends, listen, my father was like, what are you gonna do? My mom was like, please don't throw her away. Don't leave her on the steps of the Catholic Church. But then because of that, I also learned an invaluable lesson, which was, hey, you gotta figure that out. You lost all these credits or you didn't spend the time in class, like earn these credits. You got it. So my junior year, I spent having 0 to 8th period, right? No lunch, PM school that started right after 8th period that went all the way up to maybe about 5 p.m. and Saturday school. I had to go to Saturday school as well because I didn't pass PE, which all you had to do was show up and breathe, but I didn't even do that. And so that was my junior year in order for me to make up all the credits I lost in my sophomore year. And so I also learned that I was great at reading, because even though I didn't attend and I just kind of put together a few quick papers, I still passed with a 65 for reading for English without much effort. So imagine if I had actually gone to class. And I'd say the last thing that this is the biggest impression that was made on me in high school, and that was two educators, Dr. Steger and Miss Turner. Dr. Steger was my ELA teacher. She was our reading and writing teacher. And one day she came in that classroom, she looked at us, a room full of Black kids and maybe a couple brown kids, closed the door, and she was like, I'm gonna teach y'all how to write a college paper. I'm gonna teach y'all how to do parenthetical documentation. We were like, parenthetical of who? And it was not a part of our curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Steger, older Jewish teacher, taught all of us Black and brown kids in that classroom how to write a college paper, right? Many of the kids in my school, I don't know if people didn't feel like they were going to college or whatever, but the other educator's name that I said, Miss Turner, was in charge of a co-op program. So after I fixed the mess that I made in 10th grade by having a hell of a junior year, got my average up to a 90.25, and Miss Turner, a lot. Yeah, pretty much I was in the streets. Okay, let me tell you something. Get me a t-shirt, baby. I will wear it.
I'm a heathen now, so you're good. You good. You all good.
Glitter and rhinestone. But Miss Turner allowed me, even though she didn't like my attitude, she didn't like a lot of things about me. She, there's something that allowed her to put me in the co-op program. And the co-op program allowed me to go to school one week and go to work the following week.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah, we moved as a cohort, right? So there I learned, I experienced like real career preparation, right? And just life skills in terms of managing both, right? Because we had a full schedule. On week 8, it was all the classes, everything had to be on time, right? And then week B, we were out in the field literally with real jobs, like paying taxes, getting paid, all of that.
Poor Omar. I don't think we answered the question the way Omar needed us to answer these
questions.
No,
actually, you're answering it exactly the way
that
I want to make a point. But go ahead, I'm very interested to hear how you go about to flip this back to this thing.
Well, what was the question?
No, you did fine. I just think that I think we were supposed to answer a certain type of way. I don't know, because Omar is leading it, but I'm curious how he's gonna take that and move us. I am intrigued.
Okay.
Indeed, man. I know exactly the way I'm taking this, and I wanted honest answers because ultimately, I've got exactly what I need on both sides of where I'm taking this. But Toya, Mr. Ankrum, where y'all at? We want to hear from you. Please comment in, especially from our audience. I just want to hear a blurb, what y'all learn in high school. And some of y'all may be like, I ask my parents all the time, and the often answer that I get is shit, I had a good time. As David said, I learned social skills, and
girls.
I mean, social skills mean what?
Girls.
Asking out boys, asking out girls, parties, understanding the nature of the American hierarchy system that gets involved, cliques. I mean, you learn a lot, as David said, from experiencing it. But other than a couple of different examples where Doc's I learned some of the scientific stuff, I wish I explored it more. Or Mr. Castillo, that's apparently learned math. And I'm like, all right, man, you the only one. And that's you went into engineering or, some other math related course where I'm super impressed. Or ditching school to go to Burger King. How to write a college paper, which is badass. The two ways I'm taking this is, we have this system, the Carnegie credit system, which everyone uses, which everyone knows is okay, so you went to math and you got a credit for algebra 1 first semester and a credit for algebra 2 second semester, whatever, 0.5, and you got a year's worth of credit. Same thing for English, same thing for science. And it's made me deeply question, is this what we should be learning? Because humans invented the credit system, and humans are still navigating this system that we're currently using in high school. So my major question is That's cool. I worked in cut classes too. See, like everyone learned how to get the hell out of school as opposed to stay into school.
I did not cut. I did my dirt in school, but I had a big pops, and he would have got with me if I got caught cutting. I didn't play them games. I did not play them games.
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel you. My mom.
I was not his cute little daughter girl that to go to Burger King. He would have got with me. Like it would have been a problem. So
it just took a while for
them to cave my whole chest in.
Yeah, man. Jubilee learned manipulation is what she learned.
I did. My parents West Indian, so they don't play either. But it took a while for them to find out.
But you did. You were playing with them Whoppers and shit. So here's my contention about high school in America. Is this leading into our second question that I want us to get into, which is you look at just Texas, for example, and we follow something called the TEKS, TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. I had a huge debate in grad school about this shit because some people are like, there is universal knowledge that everyone needs to know. And I'm like, fuck that. Okay, so cool. You remember 1776. You remember the War of 1812. I'm more interested in the skill set of why we had to write a Declaration of Independence, not what was necessarily in it. What were the factors that caused it, which is the skill set versus the knowledge set. And I'm coming at this saying, I think the knowledge set is, I don't want to say completely anachronistic, but slightly anachronistic. I can pick up a phone and I've got the world's knowledge right here. And yes, I think it's important for someone to have some general sense of like where some countries are in the world, just to understand like, culture and geography. So you're not completely ignorant, but that's more of a skill set of understanding how does the geography of a place, say south of the equator or north of the equator, play into, the sociological aspects of food, habitation, everything else. What this gets into for you all to discuss and for our audience is the current credit system, the one that we're still using in high school, in every high school across the country to get into college or even just to graduate. Is that the best method for assessing student learning and preparedness for work and post-secondary success? My contention is I think it's dog shit. I want to get rid of it. I want to move in a radically different direction. I am going to, with our high school and EPL at the El Paso Leadership Academy, so much so that I want to spark the work, show proof of concept, and take this to the commissioner, who I think is going to be listening intently about alternative forms of getting away from the credit system. But I want to hand it to y'all. What do you think about that credit system? Good, relevant, bad? And to our audience, I ask the exact same question.
I've got a quick little thing to say here. I think so. I actually didn't know where this thing came from, but it turns out, much like the way that we run our schools today in 2023, very much like they were run 100 years ago, right? And so
120 years ago, that's correct.
Yeah, no, even more. And so, I don't know how the is it Carnegie or Carnegie? What do you say this?
Carnegie.
Okay.
I mean, who cares?
All right, he's gone.
I don't give a shit about that. Read Howard Zinn's History of the United States. You're going to find out a lot about this dude.
I don't know how they calculated the unit. I don't know if they were in a room, if they were doing actual math, or if they were just like spitballing. Number one, I think the world was very different in 1906 than it is today in 2023. And it's interesting. We've talked about blowing up the school model, right? Seat time, grades, and this and that. And this is like the foundation of it, right? Especially when you talk about high school in California, the state somehow, and this has got to be connected to these units is, when you're doing your master scheduling for any kind of school, you have to have like 64,800 minutes a year, right? Per year, if you were in high school. That's like somebody came up with 64,800 minutes of seat time, right, per year, and then you break that down by classes and everything. So this whole system that we have now is built on this this concept or this premise, whether it be accurate or not. I think it's outdated, long outdated, and I think it's time to call the question. So yeah, That's what I got to say right now. It's interesting. I didn't know about this. Now I'm going to dig into it.
Yeah, I was thinking it reminds me of Mario Brothers, honestly. It's like you just get as many coins as you can so that you can pass and make sure you don't get eaten, and then you'll pass the level. But I think really it's like, how do you measure the intangible? I think that is the question that just keeps getting, thrown around. I think when you have something that's concrete, right, you're working on, mechanics, and it's like, all right, we're going to build a car. Well, how do you build a car? Yeah, there might be 16 different approaches to like building a car, but you know what the output is, and that is you need this car to function, right? You need like the engine to be, there's a right place for the engine to go, right? Very, very, very concrete, right? Like there's a right place for all these different pipes and all the different, the wires and everything has a place. And so it's easy to measure something like that that's extremely concrete. Once we get over into what I consider to be more like subjective and intangible, now it becomes harder because it's like, all right, well, when we go to the alphabet, that's concrete. Do you know your alphabet? Great. But then as you progress, it's like, okay, how good of a reader are you? Well, if you hand a kid a nonfiction book, they mimight be great. You hand a kid a fictional text, they might suck. Does that mean that they are not a good reader? So I think like it gets, the measurement gets a little bit difficult once you get into those murky grounds. And I think that is why this might be like an age-old debate.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's why this system was developed is, I think, just making it easy. Like, okay, you've got these different schools. How are we going to assess learning? But cats, it's 1906. Like, let's think about 1906 for a second, man. Like, was there like running water and indoor plumbing in every single class in 1906? Like, we're using this like antiquated system that was used back then. And I think it's my contention that it's clearly outdated. My question becomes like, why the hell are we still using it?
I mean, because
like what?
Well, I'll play devil's advocate, right? Because I'm definitely for like the blow up and things like that, but it raises some concern for me because there is a standard system. So if I'm applying to get into college and somebody from Texas is applying to get into a college, for the most part, we can compare on some level apples to apples, right? Like if it's like, if we're doing this and you're doing this, this is GPA, this is SAT score. Now, I know a lot of places are going away from that, and I know there's a lot of racial discrimination and poverty and things that come into play, but it's still something that's standard. My fear is that there are going to be schools that do stop that and adopt something else, and then some of those kids are it's easier to discriminate on those kids that might want to do this as college or as a career. So you need something that kind of can prove, that you have mastered these things. And I'm not even saying that the current system actually measures those things well, right? Like, and you can manipulate that. I mean, there's a lot of kids getting passed on that got, are in master's programs now and was functionally illiterate when they got into undergrad. Now, what I would say if I was answering that, I think we should be global citizens at this point. I think 2023, the world is a lot smaller in the sense that with the internet and travel and more high-speed trains, and I think they're working on new planes that can go even faster, like the world is going to continuously get smaller. I would love to have gone to a school that had a passport system. And in that passport system, I could kind of move at the pace that I want to move in. So here was my thing. Not that things are going too fast, but that things are going too slow. If I mastered 9th grade English in my 3rd month as a 9th grader, I feel like I should be able to work on 10th grade English. Like, I feel like I should be able to do those things, and I can have a different type of high school experience, and I could, I can get a bunch of passport stamps in my school or education passport, however you want to think of it. But I do think that if there is a change, there needs to be a change that leans more on mastery. Have you mastered American government? Like, what does it mean for you to have, like, that's what we got a lot of people that vote and a lot of people that cast very important votes that don't understand how our geopolitical system like works or what is built on. I think that's I think that could be a problem. Now, I'm not saying take nobody's vote away, because I don't want somebody on the right wing to take that and chop it and say, see, Charles said this. But just to answer your question, I think that that system has worked in the past on some level, but if you're going to improve upon it and get rid of it, I think that mastery should be proficiency. I think there should be a proficiency and then a mastery. So you can do proficiency, you know what I'm saying? But maybe you want to be a master in this. And when you become master, it opens up a different level for you. Like, think of it as you can think of it as a passport. You can think of it like a chess, a chess point system. You can think of it as a gamification, but that's how I would be thinking of it. But
so I want to push on that idea just really quick, because you brought up something that, well, I get in the proficiency and mastery, Doc, but you're like, I think these lawmakers need to have this civic stuff, and I'm with you on a certain extent. In fact, like, I think whether I mentioned this on the show or not, if you're a freshman congressman or senator, you have to spend 6 weeks at the Harvard Kennedy School to learn basically how like Congress works from professors and from folks. It shouldn't be the end all be all. But what I'm getting at is that, like, that's cool if you're a lawmaker, but like, I didn't want to become an engineer. So why am I sitting here messing around with pre-calculus?
Because I think
and chemistry.
To answer you, I think that maybe the proficient marker to move on into citizenship is just algebra. Maybe it's just algebra. And once you're proficient there, you don't have to keep going in math if you don't want to. Like, it's almost, David and I were talking about like the high school exit exam. Everything on that exam is general stuff that functioning adults should, for the most part, know. So I don't think everybody needs to be a politician. I do think that in the country of the United States, it would make us a smarter electorate if we understood the basics of, like, if we go on the street right now and ask people the three branches of government, a lot of people that can't answer it. Actually, immigrants can tend to answer that question better than people that were born here. What I'm saying is that, but maybe you're like David, and he liked math. So maybe David is proficient in algebra. Then he does mastery, but then that opens up calculus for him. That opens up engineering. That allows him to go in a way he wants to go. Now, maybe I just don't care about that, but I need general algebra to graduate. As long as I prove I'm proficient, I can move on to something else. I can move on to wood making. I also think that high schools should do a deeper analysis on what that town or that city needs, so they can also prepare you for jobs in that place for the next 10 or 20 years. So if you live in a wooded area with a lot of woodlands and like in the Yosemite type area, I think you should be proficient in what David was talking about around wood making and cutting and things like that. If you live in Chicago in the winter, like, maybe there's some skills that's coming here that you need to know, like tuck pointing. I didn't know what tuck pointing was. I've lived in California my whole life. Everything is wood there. Something happened to my house, it's made out of brick. They were like, bro, you are not in California. You need somebody that works with brick. And it's like, oh shit, like that's 4 times what I didn't even know. I wasn't even prepared to like be the homeowner here. And God bless the dead, my cousin, the one who was a firefighter who had those skills. That's what I'm saying. Like, we can have a more effective education system that actually solves those local issues and makes us just better global citizens. I do think there is something to us as a United States just contingency losing ground intellectually against other superpowers like China or Russia or places like that. I think that stuff is important. And I think you can tell how far we are with this global incident that we're having right now with Israel and Palestine. Like, I'm so ignorant on that topic. Like, I have to do so much reading, and I'm so careful before I even speak, because I don't want to sound like a dumb American talking on something that's super, super sensitive. Kind of way that some people in cornfields talk about black people or the Black Panthers, right? Like, they just ignorant on it. But that's the thing, they weren't taught it at a high level, right? So that was a long-winded answer.
So I think my question becomes like, is it more important to learn about the Black Panther movement or about Israel and the Palestinian conflict? Or is it more important to understand the cause and effect issues and skill sets of why did the Black Panther Party need to exist? And what did happen in the United States?
So it's like, I agree with some of what you're saying, Charles, in terms of like, what I hear you saying is there needs to be a point where choice and voice where there's space for student choice and voice, right? And so I definitely believe that. I think, and here's me, being a dead horse. Like, I think part of our issue is the fact that as a country, as a nation, we will still need to come to the table to decide what basic understandings should be. I don't think there is a way to get past this or further along in the conversation without having that conversation, right? And that it seems to be the place where we can't agree. I think if we were able to, and in the article that you sent, Omar, I said that they're talking to like 10 of the largest states to kind of figure out like what to do. I mean, that could be a start, but I believe when we know the answer to that question, what's the basic understanding for reading, math, social studies, science? Can we agree on this? And be honest about the fact that may just take us to 7th grade. I was sitting and talking to my son a couple of weeks ago. I recorded it. I actually was going to send it to y'all in our group chat because he blew me away. He was like, I don't understand why we're learning this in 7th grade. Like, what am I going to use? I think they're learning like ratio and proportionality, right? Or something like that. And he's just like, I get it. If I go shopping, I need a discount. But he talked about some other topics, and he's like, why do I need the triangles? I don't know. And so maybe when we sit down and finally agree on these things, maybe it might just take us to 6th and 7th grade. And maybe the choice and voice might start after that. But I think the key to being able to make a decision is beginning with the end in mind, which we can't do until we agree on what the basic understandings need to be. And so when we think about the other nations, whether we're talking about Singapore or China or any other nation that we feel like has a superior educational system to ours, I bet you they have that. Now, I won't, speak too quickly because I haven't researched it, but I could almost guarantee that there is going to be some basic agreement in terms of what a child from here should know by when. Once you know that, then you can backwards plan and say, if this is the output we are looking for, then these are the things that we need to talk about during class. And these are the ways in which children can show mastery. But I think that is a really a big missing piece.
And back in the day, right? Maybe 1906, when you would go to the schoolhouse, right? It was like the teacher was the sharer of knowledge, right? Through lectures, right? And now we have like textbooks, and now we have the internet, and now we have artificial intelligence and Chat GPT. So I think the information age, it should have shifted how we think about schools and the kinds of information students should be learning in schools versus like the skills. Students now in 2023 have access to a tremendous amount of information. I don't know if we need to be teaching in that kind of information. We should be teaching them how to interpret information. Yeah. But I do agree on some kind of like agreement around and I think the real Nikki J here was talking about establishing some kind of a baseline for all subjects, right? Like, what is that like liberal arts kind of like education? What should it look like in high school, right? It should include a certain level of science and physics and dynamics and government and theory and philosophy and literature, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think all the kids need to be taking algebra 2 or advanced physics, because that's where a lot of kids get into hot water, right?
And that's the thing. If I'm a level 1, like, and maybe I'm a level 1 math person. Like, level 1 is just it's the minimum, but I have shown that I have proficiency here. But if I love math, I can go on to be a level 2, level 3, level 4. It's almost like when you see an MD, right? All like dentists and physicians, the med school starts out the same. Like, you got to do general med school, you got to do the general MCAT, you got to do those things, and then when you want to be a brain surgeon, you got to do, you got to do a fellowship there. That's what you have to do, like, to get to that next level. That's all. I'm agreeing with you, Omar. I'm just saying, like, what's the basic thing that everybody needs to learn, and then from there, like, let me kind of, there are other places I can go and be more proficient.
And I think this is like, and we got to start tying it up into each notes and all the thing. But I think one of my final comments on this is that if you look at the way that this conversation went, there's a dichotomy, right? There's these two things. It's about what knowledge should be learned and what skills should be learned. But you guys both kind of talked about a lot of the skill sets. So you go back to like what David talked about, and he's like, I learned social skills because I experienced it. I looked word shop because I was hands-on and I was doing it.
Right.
You know, you talk about how you learned, Cole, from experiencing it. Those were your exact words. You know, other than how to write a college paper, Jubilee learned a lot about life from not her school, but her work. And I think what I'm getting into here is that how we learn, which this article kind of like dives into, is through immersive experience, which is not necessarily happening in the classroom unless like you're doing a lot of hands-on learning from mentors, from experts in apprenticeships or internships, from peers. It's the 21st century. And the last show that I kind of got into, which was, hey, we had this whole COVID thing. We said we were going to do a reset. We were promised jetpacks. We weren't given that. And now what? And I think what I'm really kind of dove into from this show was that it's hard to completely agree on exactly what knowledge people need, but that knowledge is out there. And I think there should be some level of choice and there should be some level of autonomy as to like, hey, I'm interested in politics and law and legal and history and philosophy. I would like to center my high school career a lot more towards that and have some level of autonomy to look at jobs and skill sets and knowledge that are really going to adhere to my interests, because those interests will then fuel the skill sets. Whereas Cole, you could have dove way more into science, but I don't want to be forced to take physics in senior year when I had zero interest in it. I don't care if it's the way that the world works. I don't care. Like, I mean, I love, like, to the real Nikki, man, love you. That is an awesome addition to this conversation. But just for me personally, like, none of how air, space, and time function will have anything to do with how I have had success in this world. I am now 44, have had ludicrous success. And that has not played any factor into it whatsoever. And I think that we have not done a dive into how kids learn, how people learn, and then adjusted our schools for it. And I think even the four of us couldn't come up with a common, like, well, what should we learn? And this is kind of getting to the
2 minutes,
like,
man.
Who decides this shit?
It was 52 minutes, man. Solve the world's education problem. And
that is the point of this podcast, man. I solve shit in less time than commercials.
No, man, but I don't think that you're actually disagreeing. I think I agree with you. I don't think physics, a deep level of physics, is in that baseline of what you need to know to be able to function though. I think that we got to get clear on what that basic part is, and then I think, you know, because listen, if high school would have been like, you know, like the Boy Scouts or like the Army, right, where you put like pins for everything, like, okay, basket weaving or archery, like I would have been a very competitive kid if I had to walk around with like my jacket. Like I would have wanted like the chemistry thing. I would have wanted the physics thing, right? Like that would have spoke to me. That might not speak to everybody, but you know, but I think that would have been an interesting way to do school. I think that would have actually sparked me in a different way.
Right. And why force everybody to do it? And to answer, you know, Nikki's comment, my doctor who graduated 99% of her boards answered this question and she said, jack shit. She learned it on her own through internships, barely learned anything relevant in college that really helped her. And it was in medical school that she got through it. But she had choice and autonomy to choose these things thereafter. And what I'm getting at is why not choose that autonomy more in high school so that we can have kids who want to dive into those subjects more so in high school without everybody being forced to do this credit system where everyone is forced to do all this stuff. Whereas, like, you know, Jubilee said it, like, we could probably learn all this shit by 9th grade, 8th grade, and then have a lot more choice and autonomy in our learning coming in high school.
And
so
other countries do that.
That's exactly my point. And there are other countries who are now accepting alternative high school degrees based more on competencies than on credits. The University of Melbourne is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Where they're we're doing this new because this whole system sucks ass. And this is not the way that we are getting prolific learners. And they're realizing that kids that are graduating from competency-based places are having way more success in the real world and way more success in post-secondary because they're actually learning as opposed to like learning the game of how to get through high school.
So I know,
we're 55 minutes, man. Final thoughts.
I know. Oh yeah, we're there already. I will just say, limited time to take on such a big topic. Sorry, my headphones died on me. But like I've shared before, we're getting ready for high school, right? My son's going to be in high school next year, and so he's in his 8th grade. And we are literally, like, I with him have been working on trying to navigate his schools. It's a middle school's like credit system, grades. How are teachers grading? How does your grade go up? How does it go down? Preparing for the next 4 years, right? So it's actually like we're literally trying to figure out how to game a system, right? We're not talking about changing the system, but we're talking about how to game a system. And that's that's sad. That's a sad commentary. We're not talking about like, we are, but like, what is your passion? What do you really want to pursue? What excites you about learning? But instead, we're forced to like figure out how to game a system, because when you go from middle school into high school, that's when you really start to build up your credit history, as you will say, through your transcripts, right? And that dictates, what happens after high school, the kind of colleges you can apply to and all that. So it definitely gets very real world. And I think it's an interesting question. And it's also kind of sad that, we're stuck in this mindset of like, there's this antiquated system. Here we go in 2023. The best thing I can do as a parent is to help my child navigate an antiquated system that was like basically created in 1906. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think in my final thought, I'll get out the way. I think, I've been trying to study empires and empires that failed. So I've looked at the Roman Empire, stuff like that. But what Marcus Aurelius did for his son, like, he gave him a very personalized education, because he's like, I'm a king. Well, not a king, but I'm the ruler of Rome. And like, sons don't usually just get this. So if you're going to be prepared. And the first part was self-defense, leading your army. And he just had his best soldier, Narcissus. That's where narcissism comes from. Narcissus used to just beat the shit out of his kid every day until he got proficient. Until he got proficient and able to lead an army. Then his dad said, okay, you've done that. Now you're going to learn politics, but not politics on who did this and who did that. He taught him like how to negotiate, when to go hard, when to go soft, how to take over nations. Like, it was like a real thing. And I'm studying those, and I love to find some more African ones, but I'm also going to study matriarchs. But the point is that I would have loved during the pandemic, if on Twitter or social media, if somebody talking about COVID and what to take or not, if it said level 6 physician versus somebody else was talking this like level 1 or sub level 1, like, I think that would have just helped out society a lot more. I think we're in a time where there are not enough boundaries between who are experts and who's good at the internet. And I think that's a very, very dangerous place. And so for me, the 4 of us are educators. The 4 of us have learned how to do this. So I'm doing my own section on just Derek Bell. Like, I'm going deeper into Derek Bell. I built my own curriculum. I built my own stuff to kind of go in there. So I'm just not speaking flippantly on things that I may have read in passing or I may have read in grad school, but I didn't really, I would still be technically a level 2. I want to be a level 10 on this brother and see where that leads me, right? So that's what I would tell people listening. Like, study people you admire or people that you think are smart or whatever, and try to find out how they got to that point or what they do with their own kids. I think that you find a lot of secrets in that. And so, those are my final thoughts to get it out the way. But great topic, Omar. And I will say, I do see the thread from like your show a few weeks ago. I see what you're trying to do with today's show. I think that there's like, a section that you're trying to like hit, and kudos to that, man. And we want to help you get there, because I think it's actually really brilliant.
Oh man, thank you.
It's a conspiracy. That's what it is.
I think so.
C-O-N
conspiracy.
Jupe.
Oh God, this was a great show. Thank you, Omar. A couple of thoughts. So Gladwell's book that talks about the whole like 10,000 hours. That's kind of what I was over here thinking about, that like nothing replaces just the power of practice. And you know, I love to live in the space of duality. Like you need theory, right? To Omar's point, and rationale, and just understanding sort of the foundational pieces of a thing. So you need the theory piece, and you also need the practice piece. Like all of my greatest learning has happened where both have been present, you know, if I am honest. And then I think we need national standards. Like we need to come together and figure out what are we saying our students need. And I know that's not going to be without a bunch of foolery, but it is something that's necessary. I don't know if we could take a page out of somebody else's book, but I think it is important for us to get to a place where we understand, all right, between pre-K and 7th grade or 8th grade, these are the mandatory standards, and this is what we need kids to know and be able to do. So both the knowledge and the skill set. And I had, you know, students spend most of their school years being told what to learn and how. And if we want our future, the adults that will be of the future to be able to critically think and make decisions, then shouldn't the way that we teach them and shouldn't the way we do school be representative of what we want to exist in the future. And so I'm reading this book called Feeding the Hand That Bites You. It's a parenting book. And it talks about the concept of planned emancipation. And that to me is parallel to this conversation today, because it's like, all right, eventually this 8-year-old, it's funny because I was thinking this morning when I was driving, like, you know, today's 18-year-old literally like 10 years ago was in 2nd grade. Like that's not so much time. And so we're spending time, you know, grappling with all these ideas, but it's like they're going to be adults one day running this world. 18, you're able to vote, you're able to do all of these things. How does our educational system prepare you for that? To be a critical thinker and to be able to make an informed decision, whether we agree with it or not. And then lastly, I'll say, like, as it relates to like my son, like I think about my son, like he's a young man and they say past 12 years old, he's really a grown man, right? But he's 14, right? And my youngest is 12. And so for me, I feel like my household has to be a microcosm of what the real world is, right? That I can give them all the rationale or whatever, but they have to be able to practice being responsible. They have to be able to practice, you know, showing up, getting up on time. They have to have that experience and that practice in order for them to be prepared. And so, yeah, those are my final thoughts.
Right on, man. So really quickly, I think what I'm really getting at is that as we continue to assess the American educational system, like on the show, and question all the things, and listen, like I love talking about all the pop culture stuff more than anything because I think it's fun. But in those in-between weeks, I think it's really important for us to just sit here and examine, like, why are we doing the things that we're doing? Where do they come from? And like, should we continue doing them? And I think this is one of those things that I feel pretty adamant about, with just being very honest, is that like, I think the credit system is done. Like it's done. I think that like, yeah, like if you want to establish a standardized way of doing everything, then cool. Like how are we any better than like Nazi Germany with their standardization practices? Because like, this is not rooted in that, but this was practiced by them. And this just screams of that standardization process that is trying to make everybody into the same thing. And I really don't agree with that. I think that there needs to be a level of choice, autonomy, but perhaps an agreed to sense of what are some of the things and skill sets that we think moving into the 21st century kids really need. Like I built my 5 core competencies at EPLA around them. So like you talk about CRUSH, CRSHH, cooperation, responsibility, SMART, hungry and humble. All 3 of you know those core competencies. They're not far away from Covey's 7 habits of highly successful kids and highly successful people. They're not that far from agreed to competencies of like, this is how people learn, by doing it, by experiencing it, by talking with their friends about it. I talk about big picture learning a lot. I mention them like almost every single show, but they've developed their own competency rubric that they're using for high school based on like things like quantitative learning and empirical learning and communications and social reasoning. So like that quantitative component, that has a lot to do with math. Empirical has to do a lot with science. And like, I would prefer learning how scientists think through the process of hypothesis, test, failure, and learning a lot more about the scientific process than I would about, you know, the proclivities of biological organisms in the amoeba state. Bro, like, you know, again, I don't give a shit. So on
but
that
one
end,
is level 1 and one is level 10. Like, again, right? Like, you're talking about the basics, right? Like
continuum.
It's a basics,
right.
Yeah.
And I think that exposing some kids to something's cool, like that's, I think, what middle school is all about. I think we should rethink middle school in America. And I think middle school should be about a widespread exposure to interests so that there's a lot more focusing in on the high school component, because I think we're wasting our time. And I think that we could do a lot better work with our kids in high school to get them more at what we consider to be like a college level competency if we just kind of rerouted this work. But
go wider in middle school so you can go more narrow in high school. Right. Okay.
Agreed.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, man.
You got my mind going just about equity, like back to Dr. Stiegel, who closed the door and was like, I'm gonna teach y'all. You out here? Are you saying okay?
You are super frozen.
Oh, am I frozen?
Whoa, look at that, man! You got a laser show and shit.
That was so cool.
Toy was talking about the concert she went to, but you were you were stuck. We could hear you though. Go ahead, Jude. I would just.
Okay, am I still frozen?
No, I mean, we can hear you. So go ahead. You just
can hear you. Why my internet is so weird? Anyway, it just makes me think about maybe furthering the conversation anchored in equity. Because Dr. Stiegel, like I said, that was not in her curriculum, right? And it's because of, you know, who we were and where my school was located, that and the expectation for what we would do once we graduated was very low. And so I think if we have too much subjectivity in the space of like, what do we teach and who needs to know what, then some baby ain't gonna get it and some are, right? And so I think that's why I keep coming back to grounding the conversation and just making a decision around what does everyone have access to. We're going to provide resources for it. We're going to train teachers around it. If you go to school in this country, you're going to leave knowing this, right? And I'm talking about a kid that goes to school and, you know, shows up and does the work. You're leaving with this understanding. Because I think without that, if you go to school in the Upper West Side and you go to school over here, maybe your teacher, maybe you might get that instruction and this kid over here may not get it. And then we are kind of sort of recreating the same, you know, inequities that already exist.
All right, man. So with that, I want to thank our audience immensely for some good ass comments. I want to thank, as always, Ankram and Toya coming out and celebrating. The real Nikki, thank you so much. And on behalf of the Beard of Knowledge, David Castillo, the real doctor, Dr. David Cole, the real badass.
David Cole.
Oh, I'm sorry, Charles Cole. Excuse me, Dr. Charles Cole. Look at them confettis and shit.
But
the real badass.
David Cole, not the Charles Cole.
I wouldn't do that.
Well, man, maybe you guys just got like wet in holy
wedlock.
I don't know that shit, man. I'm Omar Yanar, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern with the South Star Classroom. Come out next week. Peace, everybody. Thank you.
Peace out.
You got to get the M3. You got to get